Hello guys, welcome back to the video on Stress Forecast for the channel. This is going to be the second video for today. So in today's second video, we're going to be talking about the severe weather threat for the deep south. That does include areas of southern, southeastern, far southeastern parts of Texas, and kind of even far southern parts of Texas, southern Louisiana, and probably even a little sliver of southwestern parts of Mississippi. And depending on how long the thunderstorms can stay together, it could be extended into parts of, Missouri, it's not Missouri, but Alabama and potentially Florida. We'll see how things go. So there's a tornado threat. It's a very low threat, but there is a threat, which means there's a chance for, an isolated tornado or two. However, we'll have to take a look at the conditions with the HRRR model and see how it wants to take a look at things and how it's going to progress and how things could go. There's also a wind risk that's a bit larger scaled. It's a bit in a larger area that covers our extreme southeastern parts of Texas, extreme southern Louisiana, and it doesn't include parts of Mississippi. However, the severe weather risk in general does kind of get there. There's also a hail risk, so pretty much everything. But again, the amount of individual thunderstorms and everything like that would determine how big the severe weather threat is, and also along with the wind shear. But the hail risk does exist as well. There is a 5% risk, which all these risks are on top of a marginal risk together, which means they're on the low end of things. I would even say the very minimal chance, but there is a chance there. Tornado winds and hail remain the possibility going into tomorrow. So again, here's how things could play out. So this is Tuesday. So here we go. Wednesday is when things should start ramping up. So again, we're going to see, some sort of scattered amount of showers and thunderstorms. And I guess most of these that would remain potentially on the stronger severe sides of things would remain pretty much along the Gulf Coast, just due to the fact that this line of thunderstorms is really centered right along the Gulf Coast of Louisiana and parts of Mississippi. But again, we'll have to see how things evolve. But again, as we continue on, it becomes a little bit more of a linear line of storms. You can see it kind of developing here. But again, any thunderstorms that develop, ahead of this line, which it doesn't look, as far as the HRRR model, that many are going to, I mean, you're going to have a hard time developing a tornado in these kind of scenarios where you have, the only good thing about this is the tornado risk would be a bit higher if these cells or these thunderstorms remain individual or scattered like they are here. But if you're seeing a more linear line of thunderstorms and more individual line of thunderstorms, you're probably dealing with a lower severe weather threat. But overall, any thunderstorms with the HRRR model is indicating to stay ahead of these thunderstorms that are both associated with a cold front and kind of, some sort of whatever's going on down here. You could have a little bit of a severe weather threat. And I could see this extending, but not by far, maybe in the portions of Mississippi, especially far southeastern Mississippi, depending on where the wind shear is and where the significant tornado parameter lands and where all the Cape indexes are, and along with the tornado parameter. But it looks to me like by around Wednesday afternoon, this thing should be done and over with in the evening hours before it becomes on Thursday or something like that. Or maybe it extends all the way to through Wednesday. This would be the morning hours, or I don't know the exact timing, but it seems like it would be noon by now or something like that. I could be completely wrong. But then once you get more of a heavier rain band like this, your severe weather threat is pretty much gone. So again, your best chance is going to be southeastern Texas, southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and then any of these, again, thunderstorms that come on shore like this that are individual have a chance. But the only problem is that they're running right into the actual, whole area of heavy rain rather than individual cells. But again, there's a chance that they start, getting a little bit more intense, but they're not going to for long, because they're going to run into like this heavy banding of rain, and it's just going to, dissipate the entire severe weather threat. So as we continue on, it becomes more heavy rain. But if this line of thunderstorms can make it all the way down into Florida, which it's a possibility, looks like a very strong line of thunderstorms. So again, I guess you'll have to check your radar app to see if there's any rotation with any of these, because it's very possible you get some rotation in any of these supercells that again, they are in a line of thunderstorms, so I do understand. However, they do look a little more scattered in nature and a little bit more numerous. So to continue on, They do look like they will hit Florida by late Wednesday night into Thursday. It should depend on how strong these storms stay. But if they can stay offshore and kind of go all the way down into Florida, it's going to be southern Florida that gets hit, central and southern Florida that potentially gets hit by a little bit of this line of thunderstorms. It'll probably be more damaging winds then by now, but again, any of these individual cells, depending on what the shear environment is, could be tornadic, depending on the scenario. So here's a look at the Cape first off. So again, here we go. The Cape looks really bad. And I mean that in a way that it's actually a good thing, because it doesn't look like there's going to be much severe weather happening. And again, I haven't taken a lot of other models, but I mainly stick with the HRR model because it's really good with this sort of severe weather threat. But again, it looks really low. I mean, most of the thunderstorm activity would probably, the intense thunderstorm activity would be happening off the coastline. This is kind of, what happens here. And then it kind of does want to hit southern Florida with a potential very low-end marginal risk of weather, because this does not look like much at all. It looks like a very low threat across Florida. But again, things can change, and it all depends on where that line of thunderstorm sets up and where the wind shear is. But again, that's what you're looking at there. Next important thing for any rotating thunderstorm or convective availability is your wind shear. Here's the wind shear. Wind shear, oh man, it is there, and it actually, right around that hour, if I go back a notch, it looks a little bit more intense. It gets into 30 to 40 knots, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like between 40 and 50 mile per hour, I'm pretty sure. And it kind of fizzles out, so there's going to be a tight window, but it's kind of moderate wind shear, so I guess there's a chance of a tornado or two, but I don't see much happening out of this. And then again, like I mentioned, I can see potentially some sort of a low-end tornado risk happening and severe thunderstorm risk happening all the way down into southern Mississippi, especially far southeastern Mississippi, kind of right in here, right where I'm kind of hinting at, right in this area. If the thunderstorm line is here and the wind shear is here, you're looking at a tornado risk. It's not a great risk, but you're looking at a tornado risk. So there's that. And if it continues like this, I can imagine some of these thunderstorms kind of moving onshore. So if that were to happen and the wind shear gets elevated all the way down into southern Florida, I can easily see a tornado risk. Here's the storm relative energy available. Again, it looks intense. It looks good. It looks good in Florida, right where you see those, right where the reflectivity was showing the thunderstorms. It looks very intense up here. I mean, it's a little bit more isolated in nature, but it is available. And then as we go into Wednesday to Thursday night, there's a potential for some isolated severe weather across portions of Florida, especially southern Florida and central Florida, depending on where the line of thunderstorm is set up. So again, your main risk is going to be southern Louisiana and parts of southeastern Mississippi. And then that thunderstorm risk does fizzle out here, so that's where the risk would be on the lower end of things, where the wind shear is, where the available energy is, and the Cape is, the convective available energy. I could be wrong, but I would say anywhere in northern Florida you're probably safe, because this looks more rain than it is thunderstorms. But I can see right along the immediate coastline where any of these stronger storms come in, it could be provided with, I don't think there's a tornado risk here, but it could be provided with a little bit of a damaging wind risk and hail risk. But other than that, I don't see much more happening than that. Then it moves through with the available energy and the wind shear. Some of these thunderstorms are looking too impressive. They're relatively light. I call these like heavier showers rather than thunderstorms. But depending on how the HRR model models this out, it could depend on where this line of thunderstorms happens. I can see a lot of supercells offshore and potentially a few water spouts, but I don't think you're going to see much more than that, honestly. Here's the updraft energy. There it is right there. So again, I can see a marginal risk of weather being issued in parts of southern Florida. I don't see it being issued in parts of northern Florida, but definitely southern Florida, particularly the coastline, where any of these thunderstorms do come onshore. But I don't think there's going to be much of a threat if you're talking about those heavier showers, because those are probably not going to lead to much other than maybe some downpours, but maybe a few lightning strikes and rumbles of thunder. But I don't think you're dealing with much of a sea weather risk here. I think it's a low-end marginal risk severe weather that could be issued by the Storm Prediction Center, but again, it all depends on how the situation unfolds. Here's the photographs. It doesn't even look like it's going to reach parts of southern Louisiana, but I can see it reaching into Florida. Yeah, as I mentioned, right along the coastline, and potentially in the central parts, southern, right, I don't know where the towns are in Florida, but somewhere in the south central part of Florida, in the southern, and then the western half of the coast. Not the northern half of the coast, but southwestern Florida could be in the marginal severe weather. It all depends on how everything lines up. And with the amount of energy with these, along with the photographs, it does look like there's potential for some spin-up. And with this being said, I just want to take a look at the supercell composite. I don't even know why they issued a marginal risk, to be honest with you. The NAM model could be a little bit more apparent with this, with the energy for these thunderstorms getting all the way up into southern parts of Louisiana, but it really all depends on how things line up. As we continue on, it wants to graze by the coastline of Florida. You can see it right there. A little bit, it's like 1 to 2 here with the supercell composite. It's really low. But is it enough to issue a marginal risk? I don't know. I'm just saying there's potential. Here's the tornado parameter. It's really low. You may see a few onshore supercells, but it's really indicating that most of this activity will stay offshore. I can see the very southern, very extreme southeastern tip of this area. It's almost like an island, where some of this indication gets kind of grazed by, but other than that, I don't see much happening. But then again, as I talked about, right along the southwestern half of Florida, there's this little tiny chance right along the immediate coastline of a spin up or two. The indication is really low, but again, there is, I'm not sure, but I think there may be enough to issue a marginal risk of severe weather here. Here's a significant tornado parameter for the NAM model to see if maybe things do align a little bit more. And the NAM model is a little bit more aggressive with this, and it kind of wants to drive it a little bit farther north. So I can see far southeastern immediate coastline, Gulf Coast, parts of Louisiana potentially getting on a little bit of an actual slight risk of severe weather, but I don't know if it's going to be, a large enough area to issue it. And then the NAM model is a lot more aggressive with the amount of tornado parameter on Florida, and it wants to bring it a little more inland. So right along the immediate coastline, as I mentioned, I could see maybe around this area. I'm not sure where this is, but it's near the Big Bend, and all the way down to the Florida Keys, potentially even as far inland as this little tiny lake here with a little bit of weather risk that kind of goes like this. Maybe it kind of goes like this and kind of goes a little bit more like this, but we'll have to see how things go. It does look like there's an indication of a severe weather threat. Supercell composite. So supercell composite, again, it both agrees. Both the NAM model wants to agree with that. Not the HRR model by any means, but right southern tip of Louisiana, like the extreme southern coastline, the southeastern coastline. And then again, Florida, potentially getting on a little bit of a marginal risk here. It's a very minimal threat, but it is there. So that's what you're talking about there. So all in all, I think this is a low-end threat, a very low-end threat actually, but I do think there's a chance that you get an isolated tornado too. I think there's a chance that you get some hail. Not sure about a strong tornado threat. I don't think there's going to be any strong tornadoes. However, I think there's a chance of an EF0 to an EF1 tornado. It's a very, very low chance, but I think there's enough here. The energy lines up, the instability lines up. I'm not talking about the tornado parameter or the supercell composite, but I'm just saying everything looks good enough for severe weather, but it's just, can we get individual cells before we actually get the cluster of heavy rain and thunderstorm? That's the main question on this severe weather threat. But again, as I mentioned, the tornado threat seems to be right along the coastline right where they said that it would. I just don't know if it's in large enough area to issue a slight risk of severe weather all the way down to the coastline. I don't know. It's up to the Storm Prediction Center. But I can see a marginal risk of severe weather being issued apart in the western coast of Florida I highly doubt a slight risk to severe weather would be issued, but a marginal risk. Again, your marginal risk to severe weather is for isolated, stronger to severe storms. Your slight risk to severe weather, more scattered in nature, and then you go up from there. But that's my thinking on this. That's my general thoughts on this whole entire severe weather threat. I think it's a very low threat, but that's what I'm thinking.